Funding for this program was provided in part by Louisiana Healthcare Connections, committed to delivering quality health care through local, regional, and community-based partners.
Additional funding provided by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting.
Over the course of more than half a century, Ellis Marsalis has become known as one of the premier jazz musicians of our time. Born in 1934, this New Orleans native began playing clarinet at age 11 and entered classical studies at Xavier University's Junior School of Music. In high school, Ellis turned to tenor saxophone and the sounds of rhythm and blues.
The first time I really met him was another guy named Roger Dickerson, and they were still in high school, both of them, but they was playing music already. They had their little group, the Groovy Boys.
He realized that girls liked tenor saxophone players. And then he understood that tenor saxophone players were not working, but piano players worked all the time. Then he switched to piano.
After earning a music education degree from Dillard University in 1955, Ellis spent a year working in his father's motel business before enlisting in the Marines. Following his tour of duty, Ellis returned home and married New Orleanian Dolores Ferdinand.
Ellis is a jazz lover, and I think that's why I liked him so much. He had a lot of gigs. It looked like the more children we had, the more he was playing gigs.
I saw him play in clubs night after night with 2 people, 3, 1 o'clock in the morning. I saw him play in hotels where people talked over every note he played. And I saw him always play with the same intensity, in the same vibration and dignity, and I saw and felt his belief in music and his belief in people.
Ellis continued playing jazz at various nightclubs and began teaching at the New Orleans Center for Creative Arts.
I would finish Jesuit around 1:30, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'd get on the streetcar and go to Noka. And I remember rushing in to see Ellis to show him what I had figured out. Well, this is information that he could have shown me weeks or months before, but he knew that the best way for somebody to learn was just to provide sort of basic guidelines and let them figure it out, because that's what builds individuality and uniqueness in your character and your playing. So by far the best teacher I've ever had.
After 12 years at Noka, Marsalis accepted a teaching position out of state, but within a few short years returned to his hometown and served for 12 years as Director of Jazz Studies at the University of New Orleans.
My dad has an intense love and passion for the music. He understands the need for the young people to keep the music going.
In 2011, Marsalis and his family were awarded the highest honor that our nation bestows on jazz artists, the National Endowment for the Arts Jazz Master Fellowship.
My dad really represents jazz and the greatness of his generation and what they were able to offer to the world. And he makes me realize the importance of giving as much of yourself, not only to your audience, but to your craft as possible at all times.
He has embodied the very best of what our culture has to offer, and he's embodied it through the arts. And I try with every note that I hit or play, when I talk to people, when I deal with them, when I touch them, when I talk to students, older people, younger, I don't care. I try to embody with the same power and belief that fueled him for all those years in obscurity. The one great blessing in my life was to be his son.
Welcome to Louisiana Legends. I'm here at the Ellis Marsalis Center with one of the premier jazz pianists in the world and an acclaimed teacher, a Louisiana legend, and we're going to chat a little about your life and about jazz. Thank you for letting us be here. Do you love coming into this center that has your name on it?
I do, except I haven't been able to get into it as much as I'd like. I do have some plans to actually come in and record here.
Great.
Which I've been delaying.
Well, I understand that one of your sons, Branford, they were talking to us here at the center, that he has to play all the time, that he just wants to play constantly. Are you like that as a musician? Do you just love to actually be performing?
Not to that extent. Well, Branford's situation is different. Branford, in the later years, I don't know, that's not a good way to put it. Branford eventually started playing classical music as a saxophonist. And as a result, the bar is high for that music. So consequently, he has to do a lot of practicing that he may not do if the only music he was playing would be jazz music.
You know, we spoke of one of your sons, Branford, but you, of course, your entire family was honored as the first family of jazz, and what an incredible legacy, and playing different instruments. When they were little, did you suggest an instrument to Wynton or Delphio?
I think I did. Delphio says he doesn't remember me doing that to him. But I definitely wanted each of them to play a different instrument.
Because you'd have a jazz combo? No.
No. In those days, if you had any kind of job at all pertaining to jazz, you consider yourself fortunate. And there was not many of us as parents who felt confident enough to try and stimulate kids to do that. Now, New Orleans is a city where a lot of sons and not too many daughters, but where a lot of sons were able to get into the playing of jazz because of the kind of city and the kind of culture that we live in. And with the connection between the tourist industry, which is kind of the economic engine for the city of New Orleans, by the time you get old enough to get in trouble, if you have a father or an uncle or somebody who's playing music consistently, it's a good chance for you to get into it. Now, there's also the contingency of younger people wanting to just play the music of their contemporaries, which the names change all the time. At one time it's rhythm and blues, another time it's rock and roll, and another time it's rap and hip hop and whatever. But it's the current music of their generation.
I know your son Wynton has said this in his lectures, that you have to actually study and understand some of the underpinnings of classical music?
I think what Wynton was talking about is establishing yourself as a serious musician, which requires a certain level of understanding about Western art form, Western music. There are people who will sometimes make those blanket statements about things like, well, if you want to play the organ, you got to play the piano first, which is nonsense. Or usually what you get with parents here and teachers that, well, you can't make no living playing that, so you have to do something for which you're going to get a job. And you do have to do something for which you're going to get a job, but it's not necessarily true that you can't make a living at it. But because I don't think, as it stands, that we live in a society in which excellence is promoted on its own basis. I'm sure that the gentleman operating that camera had to know something about videography, about light, and the whole process for which to get the images that need to be there.
Well, Ellis, you know, music has held you in good stead, though, through your whole life from, as we saw in our biographical sketch of you, you were in the Marines and you played music in the Marines, too. Is that right?
I did.
So music has been such an integral part of your life and sort of the underpinning of it. It even, you say your wife is the one who kind of helped you most, and you thanked her that night. What was her role in your
Well,
life?
she, like very dedicated mothers, just took care of the whole family. She was a home economics major, and she'd gone to Grambling State University to major in home economics. So when we got married, she was able to keep everybody healthy because she understood about foods. And she also was one who would go shopping for clothes. I can remember going with her. It's one particular situation with myself and one other guy. And the doors were about to open, you know, and all of these ladies just went running into the store. And it was an experience which had other kinds of overtones for me.
Well, you know, we're talking about music as being a metaphor really for life and a lot of things. And you say jazz is the metaphor for having a conversation, right? You have to have a cooperation, and you have to have a conversation. Is that what you tell your students too?
That's one of the things that I do tell the students. If I'm fortunate enough to get students who have moved along the road of fundamentals, most of the time, I have to end up telling students, you have to practice the instrument. You have to learn how to play this instrument. You know, forget about, well, I want to play jazz. Well, you better learn how to play this instrument. And there's some very specific
Do you have to
practices.
do scales still? Is that what your scales? Those
Well,
of us who are very
scales
elementary.
are like alphabet.
Yep.
I mean, you know, if you're going to speak the language or write it, you have to know what the alphabets symbolize.
And do you play with a lot of musicians who don't read music at all? Or
No, not now.
Not now.
I mean, that's not altogether a negative thing. One of the greatest jazz pianists ever was Errol Garner, who did not read music. But, and I'm sure that there were others, but they were mostly exceptions. The younger people today are very learned in the process of learning to play the instrument. A lot of people would be surprised to know, if you look at, you know, like the country music station, how many of those musicians are extremely accomplished, even though they play what they're being paid to play. You see? Because I met a kid, well, I was sort of overseeing 5 musicians for the National Association of Jazz Educators. Harry Connick was one that year. And the oldest of them was 17, and he was a guitar player from Texas. And we played in a little slot that they gave us. And I didn't see him for many, many years. So when I was teaching at UNO and he came over to visit, because he was in town. So I said, well, what are you doing, man? He said, I'm playing with Merle Haggard.
Oh.
You know?
Yeah.
And there are lots of very good drummers who play in rock bands.
Like one of your sons is a drummer as well. Has he ever played
Right.
in a rock band? I want to know. Yes?
He never did, and I don't think it's because he didn't want to. It's that Jason came along at a time where he was not in a school situation where there were, like for example, most of the brass bands most of those guys started together at some in junior high. You know, like Kermit Ruffins did.
Yeah, yeah.
You see, so he was not in one of those kind of schools, so he didn't really get the full benefit of the popular music of the day. He knows how to do it.
Following Katrina, are you feeling good about the city still being a source of music for the next generations coming up?
Katrina was not a situation that could have interrupted that. There were people who would ask questions like that. What is it like after Katrina and what have you? But for the most part, I think that it's like what Dickens said, this is the worst of times and the best of times. Schools today are approached differently. For example, when I was growing up and also when I started early teaching, the Orleans Parish School Board would hire 2 music teachers. And whatever school that rated music, one was a band director and the other one was a choral director. And that was it. So you had to create whatever magic you could create on your own.
And you were both that in Brobridge, right? You were both the choral director and the band director, right?
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So consequently, today, and it may not be fair to say it's the worst of times, but see, charter schools have options that the older schools didn't have. But at the same time, if the charter schools implement the arts, and I always say the arts rather than music, because I don't think music is a standalone thing. If they implement the arts as a part of their education and philosophy, then it could really be the best of times, because the administrative officers who operate the charter schools are free to get rid of duds. The old days, it wasn't that easy. If you came to the public schools and you were assigned to XYZ school, if you taught for 3 years and 1 day, you were automatically tenured. You could have been the worst teacher in life, but you were automatically tenured.
And now that's not the case, you know.
Not with charter schools. I don't know that it is with any of the rest of them.
Right.
You see, because ultimately, the unions did come in, but I don't think that the unions, because I was a member of the early unions with UTNO, I think they were in a position to negotiate for things like dental, eyeglasses, and what you had. But I don't think they were ever in a position to hiring and firing.
But you know, you were in a unique position, having been a teacher at the high school kind of level and university levels and in enrichment activities, but you brought real life into the classroom too for your students, having performed all over the world, and you performed with some greats. Who are your favorite people that you performed with?
It's hard to say, and the reason why is that everybody that I performed with brought something that I needed to get. Like I was with Al Hurt's band for 3 years. More of what I learned as a result of being with Al Hurt had to do with peripheral things. I got to be in the city of New York consistently because his management was there. So I was able to see, hear, and meet people that I probably never would have met. And it was a pleasure to play with Al because he was a monster trumpet player. And there were other people. Early on, I played with Earl Bostick's band for a short period of time. Most of the people that I played with were primarily here because I was mostly here.
Mostly here.
Yeah,
But a lot of people, I mean, this is the epicenter, though. Do you people from all across the world come here to New Orleans? Do you have people just show up at Snug Harbor from all around the world?
Oh, yeah. You know, every set, you know, people come up to you after the show and say, I'm from Australia, you know, I'm from Japan, you know, I'm from China. I mean, you can name it. They're all from somewhere. Because Snug Harbor is a tourist haven, and if it weren't for that, I mean, we could never do what we do just based on locals coming in to support it.
Now, you've been getting all sorts of honors. You're a Louisiana legend, and we're happy to honor you. But you've been given NEA awards, the First Family of Jazz. Have you played at the White House?
Ironically, I played at Richard Nixon's White House.
You did?
Yeah. I was with the Al Hurd Band, and we played for Richard Nixon. And I'm trying to think. I don't think I played. Well, wait a minute. Let's see. Just recently, Winton was chosen to be, what do you call it?
He got a big award, I know.
Well, I don't think he got an award here. What happened was the First Lady had sponsored all of these kids from all over the country, jazz players,
yes,
and bands, and Winton was asked to kind of take charge of that. So I was there, Branford was there, Jason was there, and I think Delphio, and I don't remember who the bass player was. But anyway, we played in more of a workshop format. For, you know, the kids.
For the kids who were there to inspire, you know, musical education, or the best kids.
Yeah. And there's some good kids there who could play, because this was mainly kids who were already in high schools but were playing jazz music. And there were, there's a room full of them. There's a lot.
Well, that's inspiring for the next generations. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I have just loved knowing more about you and seeing that you are a real teacher. I mean, your life work has been a wonderful inspiration for many people around the world. And I couldn't leave this beautiful place, though, without asking you, play me a tune. I'm your audience right now. Give me a... Fabulous. I'm applauding. And thank you. I love visiting with you. And thank you all for joining us for Louisiana Legends. We'll be back again with another legend, and it's been such a treat. Thanks again, Ellis Marsalis. Thank you.
You're welcome.
For a copy of this program, call 1-800-973-7246 or go online to www.lpb.org.
Funding for this program was provided in part by Louisiana Healthcare Connections, committed to delivering quality healthcare through local, regional, and community-based partners.
Additional funding provided by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting.